Hi there, I'm Chris Devine, and this is Six String World. So, I don't often stick my nose or add my 2 cents to any controversial topics, and especially with this one where it's about two manufacturers, because being a product reviewer, commenting on manufacturers' activities is kind of in the biting the hand that feeds you category, and I'm going to very carefully try to tap dance through this minefield of a subject. And what it is there's a company in the Bay Area called Revival Electric, and they make some pedals. They also do amp repair and service. They seem to have been around for a few years, and they've been working at it for a period of time. Origin Effects out of the UK has a pedal called the Revival Drive. Actually, they've got a few pedals that have the Revival name in it. And recently they tried to apply for a trademark and with the name Revival. And somehow when they applied for that, the patent office told them that this company, Revival Electric, has a trademark that already exists in their field, which is guitar electronics. Revival Electric makes pedals and such and does service. Origin has a device called the Revival Drive. Like I said, a few of them. And apparently, Origin has decided to take legal action against Revival Electric for use of the trademark. Now, I'm not a lawyer, but it's an interesting conundrum. Usually when something like this would happen, a manufacturer might reach out to the company and maybe figure out what's going on. And apparently, somewhere along the way, Origin Effects somehow, or their attorneys, have figured out that Revival Electric isn't as big a company or makes a lot of product. And I'm not sure about how true that is. I've only heard it in a couple of videos, and I've only seen it in a couple blog posts on the internet. And if you believe everything on the internet, you've got bigger problems. But it would be interesting if you find a company using that name in the same area. Most companies, I would assume, would either try to either settle that amicably or out of court, or at least cheaply, or just move on and get a different name. For example, in the late 1940s, Fender had come out with the Broadcaster, which, if you don't know that story, was the Telecaster. But the first name it was called was the Broadcaster. Gretsch, at the time, had the name Broadcaster associated with some of their drums. And they reached out to Leo and said, hey, Mr. Fender, we happen to have a product that's the same name as your product, and we don't want to have any confusion. So what Leo did was, from what I understand, I don't hear any stories of a kerfuffle or a fight or anything legal. What Leo decided to do was take the Fender Broadcaster decal that went on the headstock and snipped off the Broadcaster name, and they applied them to the guitars, and they hence became known as Nocasters. Shortly after that, they came up with the name Telecaster, so that's how the Telecaster name came to be. And that makes sense. It's a pretty simple action to solve a problem. Another example is right here in my lap. PRS Guitars, they originally came out with their bolt-on guitar, and they called it the Classic Electric. And I believe they may have been in production for 1 or 2 years. And then Peavey had notified PRS Guitars that they happened to have a trademark on the term classic applied to guitars and amps, because Peavey had the classic line of amps, the Classic 30. It was a perfect example. Peavey had that trademark. So PRS decided, well, we'll change the name. We'll call it CE, which shortened for Classic Electric. Again, it makes sense to have a really simple and hopefully cheap way of solving a problem. And all parties are hopefully happy. And it comes to my thought that OriginFX has found a company using a name that they want to use, and I kind of just wonder, well, what sparked a legal action? Because lawyers cost money, and lawyers are not cheap. It just doesn't make sense to go down that road. It would be more, maybe it's just me, but I would be more thought of, well, I found this company, they have a name already, and even though I may have 3 or 4 products in my line, I can't trademark that. I would think of maybe changing the name, but also drawing attention to the name change, because it's kind of like New Coke. When something changes, there's an attention to it. There's probably more attention to it. So it kind of adds an element of marketing that I don't think you can really buy. Even have a contest of have someone come up with a new name for this this item. That way, draws even more attention. They give the winner one of the new named products, or give them the choice of having one of the last of the old named products. It kind of also goes into the Spinal Tap thing. If you remember the bit where they talk about getting the name Spinal Tap, they talk about how their band name was, they were the Originals, until there was another band out there called the Originals. So then they became the New Originals. And if you're a Spinal Tap fan, you know that they became the Timsmen and then Spinal Tap. So it's tough to have names for stuff that fits in certain categories. It's even tougher to kind of have it, especially when in the same category of product. And trademarks are a little different. You can't squat on them, kind of like you can squat on like a URL name. So if you find out like somebody's got a new product coming out, sometimes people immediately will register that URL so somebody else can't, or possibly maybe the person that would want to will want to buy that domain. It's happened with celebrities. They find all of a sudden they want to have a website, and some fan has made a website in their name. This happened a lot in the 90s, especially in the early days of the internet, and some people that own the names made some money, and some people end up having to give it up for literally nothing and incurred some legal costs. The only person that's really going to make any money off this whole process are the lawyers. I mean, it almost seems like is it cheaper to go to court and pursue this legally, or is it easier just to change the name of your product? Now, yes, OriginFX is a smaller company than the typical effects company, but they're a decent size and they've employed a lot of people. And I know from manufacturing that changing the name of a product isn't that easy. There's all sorts of documentation for your manufacturing, as well as maybe even having to silkscreen circuit boards with the product name on it. Marketing materials, sometimes even just making sure everybody's got the same products on their bench, making sure that everything equals out. It's not easy, but it still seems cheaper to go through all the documentation and all the changes that you would have to do on your own than it would cost to employ any legal team to go after another company. And it just doesn't make sense to me. So it's kind of a weird thing to spend the money on. If you're going to spend the money on it, why not spend it on something that's more productive, A, B, creative, and C, something that's maybe a little less invasive. I mean, they just found a company had a trademark they wanted, and they're going to sue for it. And they're kind of questioning that company's intent on making product. And it seems to be a lot of hassle for not really a lot of reward overall. So it just kind of, again, it just makes me wonder who's going to benefit from all that. And I think maybe the attorneys are the ones that are going to be walking away with a big smile on their face. And I don't know what everyone else is going to get out of it, but it definitely doesn't seem like a a productive effort. But anyways, that's my thought on it. I don't have any connections to either of these companies, so I really don't have a dog in the race, so to speak. So it's just kind of, I don't really understand it, but maybe if you guys happen to have an idea and a reasoning behind it, please let me know in the comments section below. I'd love to hear from you guys about it. That would be great. Thank you very much for watching. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. You can always share it as well too, and I'll see you guys soon. Take care.